All right, welcome back. Another episode of the Empty Gym podcast. Joined by Adam Pollard again today. My name is Jack Hobson, if you don't know, but we're doing a little mid-major and Pac-12 preview today. Kind of getting into, like we said last episode, that should be posted today. Had some technical difficulties with that, so weren't able to get it posted when we wanted to, but that'll be out uh, shortly before this episode is posted. So you're pretty much getting a two for with these two episodes kind of back to back. But getting into the college basketball previews, we got uh, just a little over 2 weeks. I believe it would be 17 days if my math is correct until the uh, first regular season games on Monday, November 6th. Uh, this weekend starting to get some more exhibitions, especially some of these charity ones. Big one to first exhibition for Illinois tomorrow. I know that, and then I saw some clips from a Louisville exhibition. So starting to get some more exhibitions, starting to get some of those secret scrimmages, and also some of those secret scrimmages have become charity games that will be open to the public and on TV and stuff. So kind of getting into the start of it. First, before we get to that, talk a little MLB playoffs going on. We're recording this just about an hour or two, I believe, before the game two of the NLCS.
Game three.
Game three, excuse me, game three. What I meant to say is that the Phillies are up 2-0 after taking the first two in Philadelphia. Phillies look dominant.
Yeah, the Phillies look really good, and I've become a Phillies hater in a way because they beat the Cardinals last year and ran all the way to the World Series with it. Which I guess looking back at it, we lost to a good team, but we should have. When you go back and watch those games, the Cardinals should have won those games. We had an absolute meltdown in the bottom of the ninth, and I think game two. But it's just so hard to not like root for the Phillies in a way. I found myself being able to. Hats off to me. But I mean, their lineup from top to bottom is just insane. I mean, you have Schwarber hitting bombs on the leadoff. First pitch, game two, and then Trey Turner's coming alive. He was kind of a stinker in the season for a while, and then obviously you have Bryce Harper, Castellanos, just guys that can hit bombs, and they have two studs in Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola who are just pitching lights out right now. So the Phillies are going to be very tough to beat.
Yeah, ever since the Phillies fans gave Trey Turner that standing ovation in like the middle of July
Oh
or
yeah,
something,
when he like struck out.
he was batting like 180 or
Yeah,
something like that. And since then, he's been on a tear that's continued into the playoffs. Like you said, the Phillies lineup is just insane. Just I feel like with a lineup like this, when it's such power heavy, like I know the Cubs had this for several years, and it was always very frustrating. It felt like it was either home run or strikeout, like almost
yeah,
every at bat. But the Phillies are a good power team as well as make good contact with the ball too, and put the ball in play when they need to, and they're very good at obviously very very good at hitting home runs. I feel like, especially when they're at Citizens Bank Park, they're hitting a home run in the first inning almost every game this postseason. But and then they got the pitchers to back it up too with Wheeler and Nola, like you said. Uh, they look like a real favorite to win the World Series this year, and uh, I don't know if they'll get it done in Arizona. I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona takes 2 out of 3 uh, in this stretch out in Phoenix, but I think I think Phillies in 6 is best case scenario or at worst case scenario for the Phillies right now. I don't think there's any way they're losing this series.
yeah. It's and the Diamondbacks coming in they've been really hot, and the Phillies just like shut them down. I mean, the Phillies beat the Braves pretty much with ease. It felt like, and the Braves have been the best team in baseball all year long. So then they just kind of shut down the bats of the Diamondbacks. So I think you're right though. I think the Diamondbacks will squeak at least one out, make it a little more interesting of a series. But I don't see the Phillies losing this series. And but on the other side though, we have a series brewing over there with the Stros and the Rangers.
Yeah. Rangers take both games in Houston, game one and game two, but then Stros last night come up with a win in Texas, in Dallas. Or that might be Arlington. I don't know exactly what city in the Dallas Fort Worth area it is, but yeah, Astros got a huge win last night that they desperately needed to keep that series from getting to 3-0. They need to win. Well, they obviously need to win one more game uh, at the Rangers to be able to get back to Houston. And if they do that, who knows? Even if they're down 3-2 going back home for game 6 and 7, they got a chance. But Rangers have looked dominant too. Scherzer had a rough outing last night, his first time back in a long time, since like I think early September or something like that. So kind of tough to ask a guy uh, to after missing like a month and a half to come back into a league championship series game. But with Scherzer, I guess you wouldn't really bat an eye at it, but he still struggled last night. So Astros got a much needed win.
And I think that anytime the Astros have Yordan Alvarez in the lineup, it's never a for sure win. I mean, even just the Astros in general. I mean, they've had so many playoff runs for so long, and it just you feel like that experience is there compared to the other teams. But Yordan Alvarez, I think, is probably the best hitter in the big leagues right now and in the postseason. But I mean, he's been going yard left and right. It feels like he's in the Phillies almost. Um, Altuve went yard last night too. That was good to see. I'm an Altuve guy. I'll just go out and say it. I'm an Altuve guy. Probably shouldn't have said that. I'll probably get some backlash for it, but I'm an Altuve guy. What can I say? Short Kings, you know.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Altuve guy personally, but it's hard to denounce what the Astros have done the last what's it been like 8 years now with their run. I'm personally rooting for the Rangers just because I don't like the Astros at all after everything they did, and I feel like they kind of got away with it all in 2020. But uh, with COVID happening and kind of pushing that to the wayside, no one really thought about it anymore. But
I also
they,
think it has to do with Dusty Baker being their manager. He's just like one of the most likable guys in sports.
yeah, that's true too. It's like he's just
It's like a shield to it all.
yeah, that it helps a lot.
It's like, oh, they cheated, but it's good to see Dusty Baker win a World Series. You
Yeah,
know,
them replacing who was their manager before that got fired? Was it AJ Hinch? Uh, if I remember right. But replacing him with Dusty Baker was probably the smartest thing they ever did because, like you said, you just got like a really lovable guy like Dusty. Um, Give him a chance to kind of get. And I mean, he's a great manager too. Like he's very smart, knows his team very well, probably as well as any manager in the league. Really knows like how to push the buttons correctly. So he always definitely gets the best out of the Astros and. Uh, so it's like it's kind of a toss up, like rooting for Dusty, but really not rooting for the Astros. But it's going to be an interesting series. Tonight's a huge game. This will probably be published after that game ends, so we don't know exactly what happened in Game Four
what's
tonight.
your prediction?
I don't even know who's pitching to be honest. But I'd say Rangers get this one, and then Astros get the one tomorrow night. Kind of like backs against the wall, down 3-1. Got to find a way to keep the series alive and get back to Houston. So I'm going. It leaves Texas 3-2, and then goes to Houston. And will Houston pull it out? I don't know. I'd probably say if you give the Rangers 2 games to win one in Houston, I think they get one of them. But so I think the Rangers end up winning this series. Being up 2-0 is huge, and then being up 2-0 after being on the road is obviously even bigger. But it'll be an interesting series. But I think Rangers win tonight, and then Houston wins tomorrow, and then it goes back to Houston 3-2.
I'm going tonight is 6-3 Stros. I think they tie the series up.
Tie the series up. All right. Well, we'll just see how that goes tonight. Like that's the night game, and then like you said, Diamondbacks, Phillies coming up in the next hour and a half or so. But yeah, some playoff baseball has kind of been boring so far lately. Not a bunch of great moments so far. I feel like it's been a lot of blowouts and a lot of uncontested games and a
It's nice
lot
to
of
have it back though.
yeah, and a lot of uncontested
Yeah,
series though.
I feel like every baseball season, like baseball comes back and you're like, oh sweet, baseball's back. You follow it for 3 weeks and then you just don't look at it. And
Yeah,
then October comes around, and you're like, wow, baseball rules.
yeah,
And then the World Series, baseball ends, and then you forget about it.
yeah.
That's kind
It's
of
been
that's the circle how baseball works.
yeah. I also feel like we got kind of spoiled the last 2 years. I think the last 2 years the playoffs have been awesome, and
Yeah.
like there's been a ton of like comebacks in series and tight series, and then this year you have all the wild card series are swept 2-0, so you didn't have a single game three. Uh, Division series, I don't think any of them went to a game five. Maybe one did,
I don't think so.
but I think two or three of them were sweeps and one went to four, something like that.
The
Uh,
D-backs swept and Rangers
Phillies,
swept.
yeah,
Phillies
Phillies
lost,
went to
dropped
four.
one.
Uh,
And the Stros, I think they swept too.
yeah, I think the Phillies were the only one that went to
Yeah.
four, and uh, I mean, they probably should have won game two of that series. Gave that one up late, and then dominated the two games in Philadelphia to clinch the series. So, haven't been a ton of competitive series yet. Hopefully, that changes with these LCSs, and if it doesn't, maybe that just means the World Series is going to be really good. With two teams that kind of dominated their side, their leagues in the playoffs. But we'll see how that goes. But anything else on baseball?
No, I like October baseball. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, should we get into college basketball?
Let's do it.
All right, so this is our mid-major and Pac-12 preview. So kind of quick rundowns of some of the bigger conferences in the mid-majors, and then as well as some of the smaller ones that usually produce some competitive teams in the tournament. That occasionally you'll see a high double-digit seed come up with an upset from these leagues, or at least have a competitive game. But start off with some of the bigger ones. First, we'll start off first actually with give you all the ranked mid-majors this year. Number 10, we have Florida Atlantic out of the American Athletic. Obviously, Final Four run last year. We'll dive deeper into them in a minute, but really good team coming back that they got, and they're ranked number 10th in the country in the first AP poll that came out this week. Number 11 in a mid-major conference, you could say they probably don't count as a mid-major, but with the success they've had over the last 20 years or so. But Gonzaga coming in at 11, we'll dive deeper into them as well. Number 17 out of the Mountain West, San Diego State. Another team went to the Final Four, lost in the national championship game to UConn. And then number 23, another team out of the West Coast Conference, St. Mary's, rounding up the ranked teams. And then some of the teams receiving votes. Memphis was just outside. Boise State had a couple votes. College Charleston had a couple votes. New Mexico and Drake both had one vote each, I think. Maybe New Mexico had two. But that rounds out the teams that are ranked or receiving votes in the first AP poll of the year. Any thoughts on kind of the rankings of those?
Yeah, like you said, Gonzaga. Um, I feel like this is kind of low. Like you're not used to seeing a Gonzaga team this low. Because they're usually all. I think they'll run their way up to top five area because they don't play anybody, and you see 15-0 or whatever, and then you have the powerhouse Power Fives who are playing these non-conference or hard conference games. So I think you'll see that 11th place ranking rise on up. But it's also really good to see Florida Atlantic back there. Um, they were kind of that Cinderella team that everyone kind of fell in love with, and they're a joy to watch too. So it's good to see them. And like you said, we'll dive deeper into them, but they're bringing a lot of people back. So um, they should stay up there. I don't know if around 10, but I could see them being ranked a good portion of the season.
Yeah, and I have a lot of similar thoughts on Gonzaga as well. I'll get into them. We'll get into them more in a second, but I kind of agree with you there. Let's just stick with Florida Atlantic. Let's start with the AAC, kind of dive into that conference. Obviously, the favorites are Florida Atlantic, making the move from Conference USA to the AAC. Um, a lot of these teams that are three of the top 4 or 5 teams projected in the AAC this year all come from Conference USA. So uh, kind of got lucky with that realignment that was approved, I think, last summer. Getting a lot of these teams moved into the AAC, and a lot of them ended up having very successful seasons last year. Obviously, Florida Atlantic being the most successful. They were 35-4 last year. Went on that Final Four run where they lost to San Diego State on I think it was like a last second shot in the Final Four. Bring back pretty much everyone, uh, except for I think one starter from last year. I forgot to write his name down, but uh,
Michael Forrest.
yes, one like key contributor, and that's pretty much it. Didn't even transfer anything, just graduated. Didn't have anyone transfer out. Uh, Bring back huge guards, wings, and Elijah Martin and John L. Davis, kind of leading scorers on those teams last year. Huge to get them back. They didn't really bring anyone in the transfer portal, which was maybe a concern, but also it's kind of tough to convince someone to come to Florida Atlantic, especially after they didn't lose anyone. If they maybe lost like Martin or Davis to the portal, maybe they could have convinced someone from the Power Five to come to them as like a bounce back, but they didn't have anyone leave. So, like I said, bring back Martin and Davis. Also, 7-1 center Vladislav Golden. He had some good games in the tournament last year. Uh, they're favorites in the AAC. One concern that I have for them, uh, starting lineup is not very tall. Besides Golden, who's 7-1, I think the tallest player in their starting five is like Martin and Davis are both about 6'4".
Yeah,
So
John L. Davis is 6'4", and the next tallest guy they have is 6'3", which is Nick Boyd.
yeah, so not a lot of height in that starting lineup, but I mean nowadays like you can play
You can
that.
get by with it.
Yeah, you can get away with it. They very extremely efficient offense last year with that 4 guard lineup and then Golden at the 5. So they're going to be definitely an interesting team. One thing that I did think was interesting was that Ken Palm rankings also came out this week. The preseason ones for those. They were ranked 37th in that. So that's just kind of interesting that analytics maybe predict a little bit of a regression. And like I'm not saying that I'm expecting them to go to a Final Four again, but I think bringing back everyone, I was a little surprised to see them at 37, but I think this is going to be a very good team and probably a second weekend level team. I mean, they got some tough non-conference games. Illinois being one of them. They're going down to the ESPN Invitational in Orlando for Thanksgiving, which Butler will be there as well. I believe we are playing Florida Atlantic in our first game. Butler is down there, so both Illinois and Butler play FAU, so I'll get to see them twice. But this is going to be a really good team, I think.
Yeah, I think as far as their floor and ceiling go, I think their ceiling this year is about a 6 seed, I would say. Probably tough to go higher than that with the strength of schedule that they're going to have. But I mean, with the rest of the AAC though, I mean they're going to have some competitive games. But I think if you're looking at their floor, it's probably around a 10, 11 seed, maybe like 11 seed playing game. But I think with them bringing everyone back, I think that just goes to show the culture that Dusty May has brought to that university, and it definitely helped a lot with the players making decisions, especially John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, of if they were going to go to the portal or just test the waters with the draft. But with him coming back and signing that like 10-year extension, I think that just goes to show that Dusty May has basically said, I'm here. I want to keep continuing to build this program, and but yeah, they're going to be a good team next year. So I like you said, I don't have like Final Four expectations for them, but like you said, I do probably see them around in the second weekend.
Yeah, I think obviously the jump from Conference USA to the AAC. Conference USA was a really good league last year, but at the top, but obviously some of those bottom teams were not very competitive at all. So they'll kind of get more of a top to bottom tougher league. And obviously that top is really good with Memphis being in there, UAB and North Texas coming from Conference USA as well. We'll get into them a little bit as well, but gonna excuse me, gonna have a tougher conference, but also that does help. Gonna have more competitive games to put on the resume. Not quite like resume games per se, but a lot less resume losses, if that makes sense. I feel like they in this conference they can kind of afford to lose a game or two and still end up with a pretty high seed in all relativity based on the schedule that they got compared to last year. Like if they lost many conference games last year, it was like going to be a big detriment to their seed. And they ended up being in a 9 seed, I believe.
9 seed.
So still didn't get a great seed, but found a way to get to the Final Four. It's one of the things I always worry about with a team running it back is just kind of like, especially with a team like Florida Atlantic that had no expectations going into last year, kind of seeing how they take that pressure and those expectations. I mean, personal example, I have it with Illinois right now a little bit for football. Having some of these guys run it back, and then it kind of turns into a disaster season a little bit. Like obviously we lost some guys to the draft in the secondary, but you kind of like you have a team that had no expectations last year, and then like they knew they were a good team, and then ended up playing up to it, and then now you have a lot of guys run it back, like you said with Davis and Martin and Golden and Boyd, but how will they be able to take those expectations and that pressure of that will be interesting to see throughout the year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Good on Florida Atlantic. Right, some other teams we got kind of interesting this year. Memphis had a pretty good year last year, made the tournament 26-9. Big departure with Kendrick Davis leaving, their leading scorer last year. He graduated. They were supposed to get Mikey Williams. That whole debacle happened, and he will not be on the Tigers this year. Ended up bringing in 8 transfers this year to kind of make up for a lot of guys leaving last year. Headlined by Javon Quinterly, the Alabama transfer, Caleb Mills from Florida State, and Jordan Brown from Louisiana Lafayette. So they're kind of trying to make up for some of those departures with mostly transfers in this new era of the portal. They're going to be an interesting team to see. I think it might take, especially with bringing in that many new guys, it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of get everyone to mesh. But I think this could be probably should be an NCAA tournament team, but could be a pretty competitive team as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Penny does with all these newcomers come in, because like you said, they have 8 transfers and then 2 guys coming out of high school, so they have 10 total newcomers. That's pretty much almost a whole roster. So just seeing how Penny can get all those guys to mesh and to buy in is going to be interesting to see, because it's definitely a tough task. But like you said, I do see them being a tournament team like they were last year. But yeah, losing Kendrick Davis is a pretty big blow for Memphis.
Yeah, always tough. I mean, it happens all the time. When you lose your leading scorer, gonna have to find some other people to step up. I think they can do it. Like I said, I think it's gonna take some time, but AAC is not a crazy terrible conference either. So it's like, or terribly hard, excuse me. But so they're gonna have some chances to kind of mesh together. I don't know exactly who's in their non-conference schedule. They'll probably have some tests, but not too many. So kind of hopefully be able to kind of ease into the season and let everyone gel a little bit for Penny. I guess we can move on to UAB. 29-10 last year in Conference USA. Another team that came up to AAC from Conference USA. They were the NIT runner-up. They lose Jordan Walker, Jelly Walker, 22.4 points a game last season, so that's a big loss for them. But they bring back another guard in Eric Gaines, averaged just under 12 points a game, 4 assists a game, and then they had a another transfer guard in Daniel Ortiz from North Alabama, who averaged about 15 points a game. So UAB's got a pretty good backcourt. Obviously going to have to replace a lot of production from Jordan Walker, but I think this is a team that can be pretty solid in the AAC.
Yeah, they had that NIT run last year, so um, they're looking and hopefully a tournament team. But they're going to be one of those teams that's going to put the pressure on Memphis and Florida Atlantic in this conference.
Yeah, definitely one of those like kind of second tier teams that we'll see if they can jump up into that top tier of the conference. But going to be tough going up against two good teams like that, and especially losing your leading scorer. But hopefully they can, for their sake, be able to kind of mend that loss with Gaines taking a step up and Ortiz taking a step up in conferences and levels of play and still maintaining that success. The team they lost to in the NIT, North Texas, also makes the jump to the conference from Conference USA to the AAC. They were 31-7 last year. They lost their top three leading scorers from last year, but do bring in three Power Six transfers to kind of mend that loss a little bit. Rondell Walker is projected starter from TCU. Robert Allen, a projected starter from Ole Miss, and then CJ Noland, projected pretty good depth piece for them, comes from Oklahoma. So a lot of losses in that from that team last year. Key departures from guys who were obviously their top three leading scorers. So pretty good players end up leaving, but kind of tried to replace that with some Power 5 bounce backs, maybe some guys who didn't have quite the success that they thought they would at the Power 5 level, and now coming back down to the AAC and hoping to kind of regain some of that success that they had in high school that made them so highly recruited.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there because you bring in guys from TCU, Mississippi, and Oklahoma, the Power Fives that they played that where every single game and conference game is not a must or not like a for sure win. Where you play in some of these mid majors where you're playing a bottom tier team where you should win by 30. So having that experience with these guys coming in, especially if you want to make a tournament run and playing up against these teams in your conference, especially Florida Atlantic and Memphis. But I think that helps out to kind of just build that team up and bring that experience from those Power 5 levels and the Power 5 type of games that they did play, bring them down to the mid majors.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how those guys bounce back from that. Didn't quite probably get the playing time that they were wanting to at the Power 5 level, so kind of see them in more in a larger role for North Texas this year. Anything else on the AAC?
No, that's all I got.
All right, let's move on to the West Coast Conference, one of my favorite leagues. They are down to 9 teams now, though, with the departure of BYU going to the Big 12. So down to 16 conference games instead of 18, and also losing kind of a perennial top 3 team in that league is going to be. It's nice for Gonzaga and St. Mary's that it's kind of one less tough game, but could be a little tougher without having another resume boosting win.
Yeah, I do like watching the West Coast Conference because back when I did live in the Central Time Zone, these games were on at like 10 o'clock. So they started at they tipped off at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So it was always almost like free basketball to watch. So it was always fun to watch, especially those BYU Gonzaga games, St. Mary's BYU games, St. Mary's Gonzaga games. Those are always fun.
Yeah, those 3 matchups were always my favorite. You've had San Francisco kind of come up in the last couple of years and be better, but those 3 were always guaranteed 3 good teams. I remember, I think it was 2019-20 season when all 3 of them were really good. Yeah, obviously Gonzaga's always good. St. Mary's always usually pretty solid. BYU had TJ Hawes and I'm gonna blank on that big's name. He's number 45, I think. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I feel like every year you always had BYU, Gonzaga, and St. Mary's. Obviously, Gonzaga's always been a top tier, but then you had St. Mary's and BYU who were always right behind them and could always contend in those games and compete in those games against Gonzaga, whether it was home or away. And I felt like you often saw Gonzaga's 1 or 2 losses of the year were against those 2 teams. So it sucks to see BYU leave, but they'll be in the Big 12 now. And I think we'll get to the Big 12, I believe, next week for that preview. But I think they're probably going to struggle in that league at the start. But staying with the WCC, obviously, Gonzaga, the premier leader of the conference, 31-6 last year, lost in the Elite Eight. They From last year they lose four really high caliber players. Obviously, Drew Timme felt like he was there for forever.
The bad man is gone finally.
Yeah, Adam, known Gonzaga hater, Drew Timme hater.
I'm a very big known Gonzaga hater. I will gladly go out and say that.
So big Drew Timme hater. Drew Timme is now gone. Julian Strother gone. Rasir Bolton gone. Malachi Smith gone. So four really, really high caliber players that they lost. They keep guys like Anton Watson, another guy that's name's escaping me right now. But they do bring in three projected starter transfers according to the almanac, the CBB almanac from the guys at Three-Man Weave. Guard Ryan Nemhard from Creighton, arguably probably the biggest transfer of the year besides Hunter Dickinson. That was definitely the biggest one, but Nemhard was right there. No one really expected that one, but he's going to Gonzaga now. Steele Venters, another guard from Eastern Washington, kind of an under-the-radar player that had a lot of success at Eastern Washington the last couple of years and took them to one or two tournaments. So he's now with Gonzaga. And Graham Ike, a forward from Wyoming, who has also been a successful team the last couple of years. So they bring in one high major point guard transfer in Nemhard, and then two kind of mid to low majors transfers that are going to start for them. Like we kind of said like you said, Adam, from the top, kind of surprised to see him at 11, but at the same time, you look at their roster, it's not quite as powerful as it's been in years past, especially when you lose a guy like Timme, who is, I feel like, a four-time All-American. He was just an insane career. But I just don't see them being as nationally dominant as the past. Like, I mean, obviously, I'd consider them more, instead of like the past, I feel like they were always a Final Four contender. Now I feel like they're kind of more a Final Four dark horse, if that makes sense. Like, still see them probably get into the second weekend, but I think they're gonna see some struggles maybe that they haven't seen in past years. Obviously, they're still far and away the West Coast Conference favorite. I feel like I think St. Mary's is still a ways off from them, but they're going to be tested in their non-conference. They go down to Maui, which is in Honolulu this year. Starting out, first game is against Purdue, so they're going to get a big test off the bat. They're playing USC in Las Vegas. They're going to Washington. They're playing UConn in Seattle, and then they're hosting San Diego State. So they're going to be tested off the bat in this non-conference.
Yeah, I think this year you're seeing this might be one of the Gonzaga teams that has lost the most. Obviously, you lose Drew Timme. I think Julian Strother is a big loss. He was kind of their guy, like their go-to guy when Drew Timme wasn't playing up to standards. But I think the biggest loss for Gonzaga this year is Rasir Bolton. He's been the guy that, especially in tournaments and then their non-conference games, you put Rasir Bolton on the other team's best player, and it felt like the other team's best player kind of had an off night when Rasir Bolton was guarding him, and he was also the guy that would make plays when Gonzaga needed them. I mean, Duke has played Gonzaga multiple times while Rasir Bolton has been on the roster, and it felt like every time that Duke started to pull away, it wasn't Timme, it wasn't anybody else. It was like Rasir Bolton. And he was kind of that glue guy, so I think that's the biggest loss this year for Gonzaga. But you do bring in Ryan Nemhard, and I think that'll be a good guy that Mark Few can kind of lean on in that backcourt.
Yeah, definitely when you bring in a new point guard, whether it's a freshman or a transfer or a young guy who didn't get as much time the year before and kind of steps into that new starting point guard role, it's always going to be tough. But when you have a guy like Nemhard, who's had so much success, is kind of more of a veteran of the game now, I think that's going to kind of speed up the not necessarily rebuild process, because I don't think this is a rebuilding year by any means for Gonzaga, but kind of speed up that gelling process with a new team that lost a lot of guys from last year. So I think Nemhard was a key pickup for them that's going to really kind of avoid some of those mistakes that they might have made if they had to rely on a freshman point guard or maybe a transfer point guard that wasn't quite to the Gonzaga standard that they were hoping for, but hoping that they could kind of figure it out as the year went on. But being able to start the year with a guy like Nemhard is huge for them. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they get through this non-conference. Obviously, the West Coast Conference is not a great league from top to bottom. Has some good teams at the top, but they're not gonna be contested by teams like Pepperdine and stuff like that. So the non-conference is gonna be big for them. That Maui game against Purdue is the one that I'm really interested in seeing. It's gonna be early in the year. Obviously, it's only gonna be like their fourth or fifth game of the year. So I wouldn't put too much stock into it if they don't play well. But if they play really well, and even if they don't beat Purdue, but if they like compete with Purdue the whole game, and if they come out with a win, that'd be amazing for them. But even if they just compete with Purdue the whole game, I'd be really excited for that if I was a Gonzaga fan. But I think even if that game goes pretty south, I would not be too upset about it. I think this team's going to take a little bit more time to kind of click and get to that Gonzaga standard that we're used to. But I think they can reach it by the end of the year, but I think it's going to be a little tougher.
Yeah, I think they're going to struggle a lot more than they previously have in those non-conference games right at the beginning of the season, because they do play big games, like you said, in those tournaments, the Maui tournament, and then they always have some neutral site non-conference games. But I think that you're going to see them struggle a little bit more than they usually do with those Power 5 non-con games. So, but like you said, I wouldn't put too much stock in them at the beginning of the year, but I don't see why Gonzaga is not going to be a problem for people in the tournament.
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's just gonna be kind of interesting to see how that goes for them. But Gonzaga, I don't think there's any doubts about them making the tournament or anything. But it's gonna be probably gonna be a little bit of rough sledding at the beginning of the year, and then I think they're definitely a team that will be able to figure it out. But I guess we can move on to St. Mary's. 27-8 last year, got to the round of 32. They're bringing back 4 starters, which is big for them. The big ones, Aiden Mahaney. Really good year last year I believe he was a freshman last year, maybe a sophomore, but kind of a younger guy making his first kind of big contributions to the team. So big year for him last year, and he comes back. Alex Dukas, another guy in that backcourt, are on the wing. That'll be pretty good for them. And their big man, Mitchell Saxon. So they got a pretty solid team. They do lose Logan Johnson, 15 points a game last year. Big piece for them. But I think they're going to be a big contender in the West Coast Conference. Obviously, like we talked about, without BYU, they're kind of like solidified at that number 2 spot, whereas in the past it was always kind of it was like Gonzaga was 1, and then kind of we'll see what happens between St. Mary's and BYU for who's the second best team in the conference. But I think they're definitely far and away the second best team in the WCC this year.
Yeah, for sure. They're always a tough out in the tournament, and but all-time St. Mary's name on the roster here, number 1 center Harry Wessels. If you would ask me without knowing where that guy played, where does Harry Wessels play, I would have said St. Mary's in a heartbeat. All-time St. Mary's name right there.
Yeah, they always do have those Aussies come in, so no surprise there to see a Harry Wessels on the team. But yeah, it's
Harry
gonna be
Wessels
interesting.
come back here.
It's gonna be interesting to see how they do this year. But anything else on the West Coast Conference or St. Mary's?
No, but I guess as far as West Coast Conference goes, keep an eye on San Francisco.
Yeah,
because they've had a program that's been building and growing and growing and growing for the past 4 or 5 years now, maybe even more. But keep an eye on them. I kind of like that team, so I think they're gonna. I think they could maybe possibly be a tournament team. Obviously, having BYU not in that conference anymore. I guess you can look at it two ways. Not being able to play them twice a year as a resume builder definitely hurts, but then you have being able to not play them is also good. So keep an eye on them. I think they're going to be a good team.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like obviously I would not say the dark horse to win the conference title by any means, but definitely a dark horse to be a contender. Could kind of sneak into into the tournament and maybe pull off an upset somewhere. But I think that's definitely not a team that you can slouch by any means. I think San Francisco, like you said, has definitely been building up these last couple years and just continually getting a little bit better each year. And I think this could definitely be a year where they kind of come out and have a pretty good year. But
I'm going to predict a San Francisco win over Gonzaga this year.
that
One.
would not surprise me. It's like I could see it either way too. I could see them kind of pulling off an upset at Gonzaga or uh, catch them sleeping on the road when in San Francisco. Excuse me. So yeah, that would be a team that I would not be surprised if they catch Gonzaga sleepwalking through a game one time this year. But should we go to the Mountain West?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, obviously the favorite in the Mountain West, obviously San Diego State, coming off that national championship or national championship game loss, national runner-up last year, 32-7. They lost some key pieces with Matt Bradley and Kashad Johnson, two guys who were really good players for them last year on that runner-up team. But bring back Darian Trammell, Lamont Butler, and Jaden Ledee. So bring back some valid experience and some good talent there. They're definitely going to be the favorites in that league. Also bringing in some transfers, a guard from USC, Reese Waters, and a forward from Campbell, Jay Powell. So kind of trying to reload after those losses with Bradley and Johnson, but I think this is definitely still going to be the top team in the Mountain West, and could be a team that is a pretty solid tournament team as well.
Yeah, bringing back Lamont Butler, I think, is huge for him. I think he's one of the better players in the country. Did Keyshawn Johnson transfer somewhere, or did he go to the draft, or is he just gone, graduate? I feel like he transferred somewhere.
I can get our research and development team on that real quick.
All right. Transfer. So here it does say transfer.
We should know this because
Arizona.
Previewing that team later. Arizona. Yeah.
We knew that.
We knew that and forgot about it. It's on the second page of my notes, and I'm still on the first page, so I forgot about that. But yeah, he's gone to Arizona. That would have been really nice if they could have kept him, but still got a pretty solid team coming back.
Yeah, I think, like you said, they are the favorites, and they're definitely a tournament team.
Yeah. Another team to watch out for would be Boise State. Leon Rice has really built up that program these last couple of years as well, kind of similar to San Francisco, a team that's just continually gotten a little bit better each year. Just missed out on the tournament last year, I believe. I don't think they made it. I could be off, but I believe they just missed out being on the tournament, kind of on that first four out. But
they lost in the first round.
Oh, they did lose in the first round?
Yeah.
All right. So just snuck into the tournament. But I think they can sneak into the tournament again. I think they got a pretty solid team, bring a lot of guys back. So that could be an interesting kind of dark horse in that league.
Yeah, I don't have too much here on Boise State. I know you are very high on them, so sell me on Boise State real quick.
I mean, you got a great coach in Leon Rice. He's kind of built that program back up. I mean, it's obviously been a football school for forever, so kind of getting that, trying to get that movement in basketball can be tough, especially in a smaller league. They had a really good year last year, 24-10. Like you said, did have that loss in the tournament. They lose a big guy in Marcus Shaver. Scored a lot of points for him last year. Scored 13 points a game for him. They do bring in couple Power 6 transfers for basketball. Cam Martin from Kansas and Omar Stanley from St. John's in that St. John's exodus that happened once Pitino came in. But your big guys, Max Rice, that guard for them, had 14 points a game last year. Great shooter from three. He's coming back for his sixth year. They're going to be a very old team. Their point guard transfer Roddy Anderson from UC San Diego. Uh, he's a young guy. He's a sophomore, but had a very productive year last year for San Diego. But then you have Max Rice as a sixth-year guy. Chibuzo Agbo comes back for his senior year. Tyson Degenhart comes back as a junior. He had 14 a game last year and 5 rebounds as well. And then you bring in a guy in Cam Martin who didn't really get a whole lot of playing time at Kansas. Definitely not what he thought he was getting probably when he got there, but now he kind of transfers to a lower level in Boise State as a grad transfer, and opportunity for him to get a lot more minutes. So we'll kind of see how that goes for them. I think Cam Martin can be a guy that can really elevate that team, bringing in a Power 5 big who maybe didn't get that experience that he thought he was going to get, but obviously going up against Kansas guys in practice every day definitely did not hurt his development at all. Maybe just didn't quite get to the point that him or Bill Self thought he was going to get to, and now he joins a pretty good Boise State team already. So I think Max Rice is your big guy there for them at guard for them, and it'll be interesting to see if he can have another really good year and kind of carry them to a tournament.
Yeah, not a tall team either. The tallest guy in the starting lineup is Cam Martin. He's 6'9". He goes 6'8", 6'7", 6'5", and 6'3", and they actually only have one. The tallest guy on their team is 6'11". No guys over 7 foot. And the second tallest guy on the team actually is Cam Martin at 6'9". So another one of those teams with not a lot of height, but I think there's 2 ways to go about that. If you have a shorter team and you try to play the brand of basketball where you have a 7-footer or like a 6'11" guy on the floor at all times, it's not going to work. But if you play that small brand of basketball like the Warriors have been playing for so long, this is going to work out. So I like I said, I do have trust in Leon Rice that this team is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, especially with the team or in a conference like the Mountain West, you're not going to be getting quite as much. You're not going to be having to go up against as much height and everything like that. So it's not going to be that much of an issue as it would be if you were obviously in a Power 5 conference with a lot more height there. But they got a good offense. They got a quicker offense. So we'll kind of see how that goes. They're really good defensive team last year too. Looking at their Ken Palm right now from last year, they're 28th in adjusted efficiency on defense. So that's kind of where they hang their hat on, is on the defensive side of the court. But could be a team that kind of makes some noise in the Mountain West, and we'll see how that goes for them. New Mexico, another team that's going to be pretty solid. I believe Steve Alford's still out there at New Mexico. Could be wrong on that. Or no, he was at New Mexico. Now he's at Nevada. I'm mixing up my Mountain West teams. But New Mexico is going to be another pretty solid team in the Mountain West. Obviously, like we said, San Diego State's kind of that top team there. But these a couple teams that could contend in that league. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the Mountain West.
Yeah.
All right. The big conference that we want to talk about. Got the sweatshirt on right now. We're going to the Valley, the Missouri Valley. Had a conference tournament champion in Drake last year. Got that NCAA tournament bid. They are predicted to be conference champs this year again. Or regular season conference champs. Bradley was the regular season conference champ last year. We'll get to them in a second. But Drake, obviously bringing back their leading scorer, Tucker DeVries, Coach Darian DeVries' son. So big to have him back in that guard spot for them. A lot of their backcourt did graduate last year, but they're replacing that with 3 transfers who scored double digits last year, or average double digits. Kyron Gibson from UT Arlington, Ateen Wright from Cal State Northridge, and Ethan Roberts from Army. So not quite what you get with what was it? North Texas with multiple Power 5 transfers, not getting that type of kind of bounce back transfers, but getting guys who succeeded at a lower level, bringing them up to the Missouri Valley, a little bit higher conference than leagues like the Patriot League and the Big West and stuff like that. So Kind of seeing if these guys can come up a level and continue that success they had at a lower conference. So Drake's going to be an interesting team and obviously predicted conference champs.
Yeah, so they do have a projected 3 transfers in their starting lineup right now, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes out in the Valley. But they do lose Roman Penn after what feels like 26 years. It felt like he has been on Drake since as long as I've been alive. I feel like I've been watching Roman Penn. He's almost a Perry Ellis. Um, but yeah, bringing back Tucker DeVries is huge. That dude can score. It always hurts when you go watch them play Bradley, and he'll light you up for like 25, 26. But yeah, Drake's got that tournament experience now, so I think that definitely helps out for when you bring a team in that's kind of they have some tournament experience, but then you get this one under your belt, and then next year you kind of have the expectations, the experience that definitely helps out come March, and especially in the Valley tournament as well, because the Valley tournament is always competitive. Um, Teams they just come to play in St. Louis, so I think that tournament run last year is going to help them out.
Yeah, I definitely feel like and we probably are a little biased too, both growing up in Central Illinois, but the Valley is one of the more competitive mid-major teams. Definitely, probably one of the top, if not the top one bid, typically one bid league. Um, Used to see them like 10, 15 years ago, occasionally get two, sometimes even three teams in, but now it's usually only a one bid league, but it's probably the most competitive one bid league in the country. You got a lot of teams that probably deserve to get at least a look at the tournament that don't necessarily win the conference title, but or the conference tournament title. Uh, like Bradley was a team last year that I think you could have made a case for them being an at-large bid. But it's a competitive league, and Drake obviously, like you mentioned, like the expectations and the pressure makes it a little tough, but the experience being in that moment helps out a lot too. So definitely gonna be interesting to see if Drake can keep that run going. DeVries coming back is huge for them, and then we'll see how these transfers work out for them. I think that's where their success lies. Is uh, if these transfers can come up to a higher level and continue that success they had at those lower conferences, I think Drake can be a really good team and probably should be deservedly favorites in the Missouri Valley. But if one or two of them struggle, I think that it could be a tougher year for Drake than we expect. And if all three struggle, then I think it could be not necessarily disaster time in Des Moines, but definitely will not be the season that they're looking for. So a lot riding on these transfers for them. Uh, Another team in the Missouri Valley, the regular season conference champs last year, the Bradley Braves, lost in the tournament championship to Drake last year. They lose a lot of key starters and key depth pieces. Obviously, the headliner there being Rink Mast transferring to Nebraska. You lose a guy in Jay Sean Henry who has been there forever. Uh, Big leader on that team. A guy who was able to take a step back out of the starting lineup after an injury and still be a key contributor. Definitely a big leader on that team. Ville, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name.
Tavanainen.
Tavanainen. Um, and then Zeke Montgomery, your point guard from last year. So a lot of key losses, but they bring back some good guys. Obviously, Connor Hickman, I think, is going to be kind of the star of this team. Duke Dean is going to be their starting point guard. Had some good minutes last year. We'll see if he can kind of take more ownership over that starting point guard role and become more of a leader and stuff like that. And then Leon's, am I saying that right?
Yeah, Malavai.
Malavai Leons, yeah. So I think Bradley's going to have a good team and be a very, very big contender in the Valley.
Yeah, you bring back Malavai Lions, and he was the reigning defensive player of the year for the Valley. You talked about Connor Hickman. I think the key to success for this whole entire season relies on him and his production. The dude's just all over the floor. So it'll be interesting to see if he has to step more into a scoring role,
Yeah,
or if you're going to
that's what I'm
see
thinking for them.
somebody else kind of take that lead and let Hickman kind of do what he did last year. But bringing back Brian Wardle is huge. I personally, I did not think that he was going to stay. I felt like he had the success that he needed to get a bigger job, and he definitely could have left. I think, was it the Marquette job that he was rumored to go to?
When Shaka took it,
Um, I don't know. I could have been
because
wrong.
that's what I think. That's what and what I was just about to say too. Obviously, you had that conference tournament championship back to back in 19 and 20, and then the tournament obviously didn't happen in 2020. Fort Bradley, I mean 19, they have that close loss to Michigan State in the 2-15 game. I think 2020 Bradley probably could have been maybe a 13 or a 14 seed instead of a 15, and maybe had a little bit more favorable matchup and potentially could have pulled an upset or two. And who knows? Obviously, we'll never know with that tournament being canceled, but that Marquette job came open that year uh, with when Wojo got fired. Uh, and I honestly think if it weren't for, I mean, obviously Shaka ended up there. You probably end up taking Shaka instead of what, or I think Wojo didn't get fired until the year after, because
But
everyone
there
kind
were
of,
there was talks about him going there, and I didn't think that he was going to stay this year.
that's what I think with the COVID year happening, if I remember right, Wojo got like probably was gonna get fired and ended up getting an extra year because no one was really firing anyone during COVID. Couldn't really afford it. Couldn't really afford to do the coaching search. Uh, but I think if Bradley would have had a good season in that tournament or a good run in that tournament that year, I think Wardle could be at Marquette right now. Obviously, they have Shaka now, and they're one of the top teams in the league. In the country, and we'll get to them next week as well when we do our Big East preview. But uh, I think this year was definitely a year where I thought Wardle was going to be gone as well. So keep him in kind of another time of like not really necessarily with the same players. Like you keep some of your key pieces, but lose some of them as well. But running it back with Wardle another year is huge for them. I think he's one of, if not the best coach in the Valley, and I think he's not going to be at Bradley much longer. So I think if you're Bradley, you got to kind of uh, keep the success going as long as you can, as long as he's here. But I think this could be a good year for them. I think, like you said, I think Hickman is kind of the key focus of that. I personally think he does have to take more of a scoring role for them to be successful. I think being at that two guard and not having Rink to rely on as much in the post. Leon's is a great big and great defender, but I don't think you're gonna get as much scoring
Yeah,
out of
he's
him.
he's not much of a scorer, so somebody's have to take that role up.
Yeah, and
Um, I
I
think it'll
think
be. I think it should, and it will be Hickman. We do bring in Darius Hannah into the starting lineup. He's been at Bradley for 3 or 4 years now.
yeah.
I want to say. So he's going to get that starting role. But defensively, that's kind of what Brian Wardle's motto has been while he's been at Bradley. They've been ranked top 65 nationally in Ken Palm's adjusted defensive efficiency rankings for 2 years running now. And I think that obviously shows with Malavi Lyons being the defensive player of the year last year. But yeah, losing ranked mass, Jashawn Henry, and just those two guys in general. Jashawn being one of those guys that was on the 19 and 20 teams, playing with guys like Daryl Brown and Koch Barr, Elijah Childs. So he has that experience. And just all around Bradley guy. So it's tough to see him go. And but I wish Rank the best. I think it was good for him to leave. But I'm very excited for this year, and I also like how we're not projected or predicted to win the conference because then we don't have those expectations. There's not that target on our back. We'll leave that to Drake. I think we're gonna get the best out of Drake this year, though.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a really hungry team too. I think obviously when you get to those one bid leagues and you're losing in the conference championship and you're one win away from being in the tournament, uh, that definitely leaves a lot of motivation for the off season. So I think I'm sure Connor Hickman took that to heart. I'm sure Leon's took that to heart, trying to improve his offensive game. I'm sure Duke Dean uh, is really excited to step in that starting point guard role and kind of try to be another lift for this team. And Darius Hannah as well, kind of getting his chance to be a starter and a bigger piece in the puzzle for them. So I'm also excited for Bradley. I'd say they're up there and some of my favorite teams to watch. Obviously, when you talked about Wardle defensively, he always has a great defensive team at Bradley. The scoring is, I feel like, kind of subject year to year. Sometimes you'll have some scores, sometimes not. But the defense is always a constant at Bradley. So rooting for them. Hopefully they can get into the tournament this year and get past Drake. But some other good teams in the Valley. Indiana State, another one that Bradley beat in the semifinals, if I'm correct, if I'm remembering correctly.
That sounds right.
I think Indiana State's going to be a pretty good team this year. Kind of my surprise team of the year, or a dark horse. I don't know if they're going to be good or not, but I'd say maybe keep an eye on Illinois State. They're not projected to be great, but they're going to be old and experienced and bring in a lot of transfers. Miles Foster from Monmouth had a very good year last year. Jordan Davis, obviously Johnny's brother from Wisconsin, taking a step back from the Power Five into the Missouri Valley. Dalton Banks had a pretty good year at SIU. He moves from SIU to ISU. And then Brandon Lieb from Illinois, the 7-foot big man from Deerfield. Never really saw the court very much at Illinois. Interested to see. I don't know if he's going to start off the bat or if he'll start at all. But I think he's going to be a good rim protecting piece for them. Obviously, with his height, strength was always an issue for him at Illinois and bulk. So we'll see if being in kind of a lower conference with a little bit less, not to say lesser athletes, but just that might have been a better competitive league for him than being in the Big Ten. So we'll see if Lieb can do anything in Illinois State. But I think they're according to the Almanac, they're projected ninth in the conference. I don't think they're going to end up ninth. I think you got a lot of experience there that could maybe sneak them into the top half of this now 12-team league. It's going to be tough. There's a lot of good Valley teams, but I think this is a team that I would not be surprised to see them not necessarily make a run at the conference title, but have a better year than people are expecting them to.
Yeah, the war on 74 is always a dogfight. So excited for that game. Another team to keep an eye on is UNI. They're always in the mix for the Valley. They bring back Bowen Bourne. I think that UNI's success relies solely on him. They don't lose a lot, but they didn't really have a lot last year to lose. In a way, their team was just basically Bowen Bourne, and Bowen Bourne's a great player. He is a mid-major player, and he's a Valley player. If you put him in a Power 5 team, he doesn't have the success that he has right now. But keep an eye on them, and like I said, all of their success relies on how Bowen Bourne produces.
Yeah. But pretty much Bradley, Drake, UNI, Indiana State probably going to be those top teams in that league. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes for them. I think it's going to be definitely a competitive league, and one that is going to be exciting to watch a lot. But anything else on the Missouri Valley?
That's all I got.
All right. You got some notes on some of the low majors and lower mid majors, so I'll let you kind of run through those real quick.
Yeah, I'll just go rapid fire on these. Starting with the America East, Vermont, 7 straight regular season titles, and they are projected to win the conference again, and voted in the coaches' poll as the quote-unquote hardest to prepare for. So Vermont, I think they were a tournament team last year. Could be wrong. They played,
yeah, they were.
Did they play Marquette?
I can't remember who they played, but I remember them being in the tournament because I remember heavily debating taking them in an upset.
Maybe it wasn't Marquette then. I think they're like a 14 seed. Regardless, though, Vermont's going to be a pretty good team. Like I said, projected to win that conference and looking for another tournament tournament chance. One team to keep an eye on, though, the Bryant Bulldogs. They do have the St. Peter's standout and star player, Doug Edert. He's coming back for his second year at Bryant. I got some stats for you here. Bryant they play a very fast tempo offense here in a very particularly slow paced league. They are in Ken Palm's adjusted defensive efficiency rankings and tempo rankings. They are 15th, and the other top two teams, Vermont being number one, New Hampshire being two, they are 300 plus. So if Vermont can keep up that high pace play against those teams, I like their chances against those two. If you don't have anything on the America East, I'll just shoot to the A-Sun.
Go ahead.
They do have a lot of quality teams in here. They have FGCU, Bellarmine, Kennesaw State, Lipscomb, and Austin P. Kennesaw State, they gave who did they give a scare in the tournament last year? They were 14 seed. I'm blanking. Was it LSU?
Yeah, maybe. I'm blanking on it too. I remember yeah.
But yeah, I think they can very well produce around a 32 team in this conference. FGCU being the projected number one team in this league. I guess moving on here, if I can find it, to Conference USA. They do lose a lot with UAB, North Texas, and FAU, but they do get Liberty from the A-Sun, and Liberty is projected to win that league, coming over from the A-Sun. But some teams to look out for in that conference would be Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, and Western Kentucky. Not too much on this conference, but the main storyline here is losing FAU, North Texas, and UAB. Heading on to the Ivy League, Yale brings back 4 double-digit scorers. They do bring back Bez Mabang. I'm definitely botching that name. He was the 2023 Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year. He averaged 10, 4, and 3 in his sophomore season. They also bring back Matt Noling. He was unanimous All Ivy League first team, and he was the Player of the Year last year. Not unanimous, but he was the Player of the Year, and he averaged 14, 5, and 2 in his junior season. But Yale does play a very fundamental style of basketball that is very tough for these Power 5 schools to match up for come March. And I would not be surprised at all if you see Yale in the round of 32 this year, just based on just how they match up with those Power 5 schools. Moving on to the MAC, they only bring back 2 of the 15 all-conference players from last year. Akron leading that conference right now, projected number 1.
John Gross.
That's on my notes right there. John Gross heading into his 7th season, and they do get transfer Ali from Butler. So I figured you'd have something to say about that. You kind of, now that I'm kind of thinking about it, you kind of got some common ground here with the Zips.
Yeah, I got a lot of connections in Akron for the Zips. Obviously, John Gross there. He's had a lot of success back at Akron. Obviously, came from the MAC to Illinois when he started at Ohio, and now back in the MAC with Akron. Ali, able to transfer for like another free transfer because he's going back to Akron after a year at Butler. A lot of injuries for Ali. He was a really good guy. Wishing him the best of luck at Akron. I think that's probably a better spot for him. Be back where he was comfortable for a while. I'm glad Gross was willing to take him back. It just wasn't quite going to work here, but I think it will work back in Akron. So excited for him, and I think they're going to have a really good team in that league.
Yeah, Akron does sweep the preseason prediction awards with the Player of the Year being Enrique Freeman, and he's also predicted to be the Defensive Player of the Year, newcomer of the league Ali, like we just said, and Coach of the Year John Gross. So pretty high expectations for Akron here in the MAC.
Yeah, kind of funny for Ali to be a newcomer of the year when he played
played for the team
2 or 3 years in the MAC already, but yeah. I think he's gonna have a good year, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that's all I got as far as mid majors go.
All right. Well, should we get into the Pac-12 then?
Let's do it.
All right. So, just like we did with the mid majors, read off the ranked teams for the Pac-12. Not many of them, just two. I think the least out of any Power Six conference. But you got number 12, you got Arizona. Number 21, you got USC, and then a couple teams receiving votes in Colorado and UCLA. So not expected to be a great year for the conference. We'll see. But kind of getting into that a little bit, the lack of success from the Pac-12, especially when you got big names like UCLA, who's had some good years the last couple of years, but then uh, obviously had a really good year last year. But they kind of lose some pieces. We'll get into that as well. But USC kind of struggled last year. They bring in a really, really, really good freshman class, so we'll get to that in a second too. Uh, but then Colorado, kind of a dark horse in that league. Maybe they've had some solid years the last couple of years, so we'll see if they can kind of pull things together there. Last year, I want to talk about this. Only 4 teams made the tournament, so not a very successful year for the conference. Oregon, you could argue, probably should have made it. If they made it, they probably should have made it over Arizona State, though. So kind of like a pick one or the other. Ended up being Arizona State, who won the play-in game against, I think it was Wyoming. Or no, IU beat Wyoming. Arizona State beat Mississippi State in the play-in game and then ended up losing in the first round. So last year you had 2 number 2 seeds, though. So the conference as a whole wasn't great, but the top was really good in UCLA and Arizona. But as we'll get to Arizona as well, but they obviously got that first round upset against Princeton uh, from the Ivy League, and then they did have only one team made the second weekend with UCLA, uh, and then you had obviously the 2 double-digit seeds losing in the first weekend or in the first round with USC and Arizona State. So for the Pac-12, you're kind of looking at this kind of like one last year with it. Obviously, you're seeing it in football right now with kind of the resurgence of the Pac-12 right as it's about to blow up. We'll see if basketball can do that. I don't think they probably will. You'll probably have some good teams at the top, but not going to be a very deep league. So we'll see how it goes. Any thoughts on kind of the Pac-12 as a whole?
You mean the Conference of Champions?
I do mean the Conference of Champions.
I hate that. All right. Yeah, it's I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think we're going to see the same success that football's having. The football success is kind of unpredicted and very crazy how it's happening. But it is kind of funny to see, right as it's about to blow up. I probably already has blown up. That they could very well produce a college football playoff team and many top tier bowl game teams. Yeah, I think this is just headlined by USC and Arizona. Like you said, Colorado could be a dark horse in this conference, but I think they do have Arizona as the predicted number 1 overall seed winner of this conference. I think it's USC. Like you said, the guard play and the freshman class that they're bringing in, I think it's just very hard to match up with, and I think they're going to have a lot of hype around them. And I have high expectations for USC this year.
Yeah. Should we just get into it with USC? So USC, tough year last year. I mean, good year record-wise, but didn't really have a great resume. So they end up being, I think it was a 10 seed, and then lost in the first round. They bring in the number 3 recruiting class in the country, number 1 in the Pac-12. Publicity-wise, it's headlined by Bronny James, obviously, 4-star, son of LeBron, 28th best player in the country. But the real headliner of this class is Isaiah Collier, number 2 player in the country. According to 24/7, you could make a real argument that he's the best player in the country. He's going to be a starting guard for them, and Boogie Ellis is going to be their other starting guard. He's coming back for a 5th year. the transfer from Memphis from a couple years ago. I think this is now his third year at USC. Averaged 18 a game last year. And then you have Kobe Johnson, averaged about 10 a year last year. He comes back. And then you kind of fill up that loss of Drew Peterson, who was a really good player for them last year, averaged about 14 points a game. Really good shooter for them. You kind of replace that kind of like 3-4 tweener kind of big guard with DJ Rodman, a transfer from Washington State, who had a pretty solid year for them last year, averaged about a little under 10 points, a little under 6 rebounds. So kind of hoping to see him take another step up to the next level for them. So this is definitely going to be the backcourt here for them is huge with Collier and Ellis. And then to be able to bring off a 4-star or bring a 4-star off the bench in Bronny James. It's going to be interesting to see how he does, especially with the heart problems that he had in the summer. I think based on the last thing I saw, he should be good to go for the start of the year. I know he's been practicing, but I think he should be able to go for the start of the year if nothing's changed from the last time I read something. But and you also have another 4-star in Artenian Page, who's probably going to come off the bench for them. 6'9", kind of at that 4 spot for them. Maybe a 5, small ball 5 for him. But USC is going to be an interesting team. They're very much a mix of really young and really old. With you got these talented freshmen, and then you got guys like Boogie Ellis, who's a 5th year, DJ Robbins, a grad transfer, Joshua Morgan, their starting big man, is going to be a redshirt senior, so he's another 5th year guy. So a lot of really young and a lot of really old for USC. We'll see kind of how that meshes for them.
Yes, something I just found out that DJ Rodman is the son of Dennis Rodman. So USC does have 2 Hall of Famers sons on their team right now with LeBron and Bronny and Dennis and DJ. So I guess you learn something new every day. Fun fact.
There you go.
Yeah, like you said, the guard play is just going to be outstanding for this team. They do get, like you said, Isaiah Collier and Artenian James both from Wheeler High School. So I think that the expectations for USC are very high this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because USC, they've kind of been a team where if they're ranked preseason, it's somewhere around like 15 to 25 around there, or like maybe they're just receiving a couple of votes. And they've also been kind of, in the past recent years, they've been kind of playing spoiler in the tournament. So a little bit of different look preseason for USC this year.
Yeah, they're still 21st in the country, so it's not like they're super high ranked, but I feel like the conference expectations are definitely higher as well as the national. So that'll just be kind of interesting to see if they can take these expectations, especially the pressure that is on the freshmen. Honestly, I think Bronny coming on to USC is probably a huge relief for Isaiah Collier. I feel like usually if you're like one of those 5-star top 2 guys, potentially one of the best players in the country, or one of the best freshmen in the country, you got a lot of pressure on you. And I think kind of having all that hype kind of shifted to Bronny a little bit might take a little bit off his shoulders, and we can kind of see him not stress as much maybe. So that'll be interesting to see how that dynamic kind of plays out. If that does end up taking some stress off Collier's shoulders and he can kind of just go out and play, and but then that does obviously put more stress on Bronny's shoulders. But obviously Bronny's been dealing with that since he was in high school and junior high and stuff like that. So he's that's not anything new to him, obviously, or anything. So I wonder if that helps Isaiah Collier a lot. I also wonder if having Boogie Ellis in the backcourt with him, a 5th year guy who really knows what he's doing, is confident with the ball, definitely like a leader of that offense and a leader of that team. If that helps Collier a lot too. So it's going to be interesting to see how that meshes with the young and the old. But I think this is going to be should be a very successful USC team. We'll see if the hype kind of gets to them or anything, and they struggle a little bit. But I think this should be a pretty good USC team.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Anything else on USC?
No.
All right. The predicted champions of the Pac-12, the Conference of Champions. That would be the Arizona Wildcats. As we mentioned, 2 seed last year, 28-7, had that first round loss to Princeton. So kind of a tough way to end that season. They lose to Bellis, to the NBA, Ramey to graduation. Kirk Carissa is off to West Virginia now. Guys that they keep from last year, Kylan Boswell looking for kind of a bigger role. He was a early enrollee last year. Should have been a senior in high school last year, but was getting some valuable minutes as a 17-year-old playing point guard off the bench for them. So we'll see if kind of that year under his belt, he's going to be the starting point guard this year. So we'll see if that year under his belt last year kind of helped the maturity of that and getting to learn from guys like Ramey and Carissa, especially Carissa, maybe what not to do at points. But
Yeah.
we'll see how that works for them. Putting him, this should be his freshman year, but now he's a sophomore, so we'll see if that year of experience last year helps him a lot. Pele Larson, 3-man for them. He's coming back, probably going to have a bigger role now too. And you keep Omar Ballo, one of the better bigs in the country, definitely one of the better bigs in the Pac-12. You kind of lose that twin towers with Tubelis and Ballo from last year, but they bring in 2 Lithuanian bigs. Tommy Lloyd, obviously, is their head coach, longtime assistant for Mark Few at Gonzaga. So he's definitely not afraid to recruit overseas. They did it at Gonzaga. They're doing it again Tommy Lloyd has taken that to Arizona with him. Getting Tubelis, obviously overseas big. Ballo overseas big. Then you bring in these 2 top 150 Lithuanian bigs. So kind of guys who didn't get scouted and scouted as much. Like you don't see them very high on the 24/7 or the Rivals or the ESPN rankings. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of play over those rankings that they got. And then also you bring in a top 100 guard in KJ Lewis. This probably wasn't the recruiting class ranking, like team rank. I think I remember that they were 10th in the Pac-12 according to 24/7, so not quite where they wanted to be in the rankings wise. But I think Tommy Lloyd's has a great eye for talent and a great developer. So I would not be surprised to see these guys play valuable minutes this year. And then as far as transfers, obviously the big one, kind of right up there with Nemhard as like that top tier transfers, right behind Dickinson going to Kansas, is Caleb Love from Carolina. Steps in, he'll be that 2 guard for him. Nice for Boswell to have another seasoned vet. I believe Caleb Love is either in his 4th or 5th year in college now. To have that backcourt mate with a lot of experience with them. Kashad Johnson, like we mentioned, the transfer from San Diego State, and then Jaden Bradley, the transfer from Alabama. So kind of trying to fill some of those holes that they had from guys either graduating or going to the draft or transferring out, with some transfers as well as some freshmen. So Arizona should be a pretty good team this year again.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like you said, it's headlined by Caleb Love. I'm interested to see how it's all going to mesh out there in Arizona and Tucson. Because I think when you come from like a Power 5 top tier team like UNC and go to another top tier team like Arizona, the styles of basketball are different, I think. So, and I think Caleb Love he's expecting to be the guy here. And if he doesn't end up, receiving all the touches, leading scorer, all that stuff, it could kind of shake him the wrong way. Because I think when you transfer out of USC or UNC, you're saying, "Hey, I'm the best player right now. Like, you want me on your team right now." So it'll be interesting to see how that all meshes.
Yeah, definitely a lot to between the freshmen and the transfers, a lot to figure out with that. I think Balo has to play a big role in kind of keeping that team together, and Pele Larson. I think you don't want to put that much pressure on Boswell in that leadership role as only a sophomore, an 18-year-old sophomore also. So I think that'll definitely be on Pele Larson and Omar Balo to kind of get that figured out, as well as Caleb Love to kind of come in, and he's got to be understanding that, hey, like I know you came from UNC, I know you've been to a national championship game, but uh, you haven't been here, you haven't been at Arizona, so he's got to come in and kind of realize that that's not quite his team yet. Maybe it has been. I know they had a summer trip this or foreign trip this summer, I believe over to Spain, so that probably helped with the team bonding. Uh, it's always nice when you get. We had it last year for Butler. Didn't really end up helping too much, but when you bring in a lot of new guys to be able to have a foreign trip, to be able to get those 10 extra practices and go overseas and get a lot of that team bonding in helps a lot in most cases. So I'm sure it did for Arizona in this case. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic with those transfers and those freshmen and the returners kind of all meshing together. But that's a problem that pretty much every team has to deal with now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you're
uh,
right.
it's not exclusive to Arizona, but when you have a team that's supposed to have really high expectations, uh, kind of see how it works out at the beginning. I'm sure by the end of the year they'll be playing better as long as Caleb Love uh, doesn't really like come in and mess up that chemistry. I know there were chemistry issues last year between him and RJ Davis with some stuff off the court that may or may not have been true. Well, I don't think we'll ever really know the true story on that one. Uh, but interesting to see. You have a guy that's had chemistry issues in the past at Carolina, so maybe a change of scenery was needed for him, or maybe it could be something that hurts Arizona a lot. So we'll just see how that goes. But
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Arizona this year. But they're going to be a good team. There's
yeah,
no denying that.
I think they're guaranteed going to be a good team. It's just my questions are, will they get to the expectations that they should be? And I think that's you've had a lot of really good teams and haven't really quite made the tournament run that you probably wanted to these last couple of years. Uh, I mean, obviously last year losing as a 2 seed. I remember DeAndre Ayton's year; they were a really high seed that lost in the first round. So haven't quite had the tournament success that Arizona has wanted lately, but we'll see if this year's the year for them. Uh, Colorado.
Yeah.
Colorado brings back their two best players between KJ Simpson and Tristan da Silva. Uh, didn't really lose a whole lot. A lot of guys just averaging around 5, 6 points a game. So nothing too much lost there. Uh, I think da Silva is going to have to continue to have a really good year. Um, KJ Simpson obviously needs to have a really good year, kind of being that main guard for them. Julian Hammond steps up into a starting role. He only had 20 minutes a game last year, so he had a pretty good role off the bench, but kind of needs to take that next step to being a starting guard in the Pac-12. But this is a team that I don't think it's going to make national noise very much at all, but could be a solid team. Probably should make the tournament. I think should be their expectations, but uh, I don't think they're by any means a contender in the Pac-12. But it's just kind of one of those. I think the Pac-12 is just not very good, and this is a team that will be solid in it.
Yeah, you're right. They do bring in Eddie Lampkin from TCU. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, though. 2 years ago, he was on that team, and he was kind of like one of the guys when they had that tournament run. It's like a 9 seed, and then I believe last year he was hurt.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah. So they bring him in. I think that's a good pickup. But yeah, like I said, De Silva's going to need to be the guy, and yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. This could be a tournament team. Maybe one of those 11 seed playing games, kind of like Arizona State has been for like the past. I don't know how it feels like Arizona State's always that 11 seed playing in the playing game. Yeah, I think that's kind of where Colorado sits at right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where like you said, I think Colorado is kind of like that Arizona State type team this year that's kind of going to hang around, probably have some really good games. Like they'll probably pick off Arizona or USC at least once, and then lose a terrible game to like Washington State or something like that. It's just like I think they're going to be a team that could be very frustrating, and like you don't know if they're going to be good or not. And like I said, 1 second they're beating Arizona, and then the next minute they're losing in Corvallis to Oregon State or something. So
How many times do you think Deion Sanders will be mentioned when Colorado is playing basketball?
every game at least
Do you
twice.
think it's going to be worse or better in terms of how often the NFL mentions Taylor Swift?
um, at least he's related to the
I think
athletic program.
if Dion shows up for like a home game against like Arizona or something like that, and he's sitting courtside with the shades on, which that's awesome, that rocks. Like, do that, Dion. Like, I'm not hating on it or anything, but I think the camera will be on Dion the entire game.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna happen. Definitely gonna happen a lot. If he,
Um,
yeah,
can we talk UCLA?
that's exactly what my question to you was gonna be.
Okay. A little bit of a different uh team and start of the season for UCLA. No Jaime Jaquez, no Tiger Campbell, and no Amari Bailey. Uh, Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell more fit that role there. They've been on UCLA for what feels like forever now, and they kind of have that better leadership and tournament experience that has led them to so many March runs that it feels like UCLA has been in the mix for the past 4 or 5 tournaments. And they were mostly headlined by Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell. But I do have a question for you. How long do you think Mick Cronin has been coaching at UCLA?
5 years.
You're right. Okay. I thought, dude, I don't know why, but I thought it was like 12 years.
It does seem like it's been a lot
It
longer than
feels
it
like Mick
has.
Cronin has been at UCLA for forever now.
Yeah, I will admit I did cheat because I also have the almanac up and
Ah, you
I
cheater.
saw. But I will say when I looked and I saw that it said it was only his fifth year, that
That's the
surprised me a
same
little bit.
thing. It said returning for his 5th year, and I was like, that cannot be true.
Yeah. I mean, especially like I feel like he left Cincinnati so long ago, but it also probably with how long he was at Cincinnati, that probably joggles the memory a little bit too. But yeah, you said it with UCLA, especially Jaquez. Uh, I think he was kind of slept on in that national championship game run, uh, or that Final Four run, excuse me, that where they lost to Gonzaga, uh, because of Johnny Juzang's March that year. Like just how good he was in the tournament that year. I think that kind of made people forget about Jaime Jaquez a little bit, and also like not to get too off topic, but I think him going to the Heat is just the perfect fit.
Oh
But
yeah,
I know
the
we
Heat
talked
got a
about
good
that.
one.
I know we talked about that back at the draft, but I think he's going to be a guy who in the playoffs is just going to come out of no, and
He's Heat culture. He is Heat culture.
everyone's going to be like, who is this Jaime Jaquez guy? If you didn't watch college basketball, and
I could
he's the
see him
perfect guy for
like
the Heat.
he fits the Heat well. I could also see him playing on the Spurs and the Celtics. Any other team, I could just like he is not fit.
I could see him playing on the Warriors too,
Yes, yes.
but those were the two other teams I thought as well. But yeah, you lose Jaquez, you lose Tiger Campbell has been your point guard forever.
45
Uh,
years now.
Jalen Clark is another key loss. Obviously, you mentioned Amari Bailey. David Singleton, a great piece off the bench. The only starter you really bring back for UCLA is Adem Bona, who also like obviously was hurt last year in the tournament. Didn't get to play against Gonzaga, which they ended up losing that game, and that was a big key for them losing him. But they bring in a really talented freshman class, 13th in the country. Looking at it on 24/7 right now, their worst freshman is ranked 81st in the rankings last year with Devin Williams. You're going to have two freshmen start this year, likely, according to the Almanac, with Jan Vide, a freshman out of Spain. Yeah, no, he's from Slovenia, and Ade Mara is from Spain. He's going to be the other freshman. Uh, he's going to be the backup center for Bona, probably. Just Bona's earned that right to be starter. But then you got another freshman right behind him in Berke Buyok Tunsel from Turkey. He was number 36 in the rankings. Uh, Vide 68. Ade Mara was 15. He's gonna, like I said, that backup big for Bona. But a lot of freshmen, a lot of talented freshmen that you're gonna have to rely on a lot this year. Bona played a lot last year. You get Lazar Stefanovic, a transfer, who's had a big role before at his previous spot, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But then you have your starting point guard, Dylan Andrews. Didn't really get a whole lot of minutes last year, coming behind obviously Tiger Campbell, Jalen Clark, Amari Bailey, David Singleton. Won a whole lot of minutes in that backcourt to be had. So now he's kind of taking a big jump, not really going from that that backup point guard to starting point guard. He was like really low on the list, didn't really get a whole lot of minutes, and now he's kind of just shoved into that role as starting point guard. So I think him having a big sophomore season is huge for them. And then obviously relying a lot on the freshmen. The freshmen are going to make up most of their depth. They don't have a lot coming off, or they don't have a lot of college production off their bench. So these freshmen are kind of going to make or break this team.
Yeah, you're exactly right, hitting the nail on the head there.
Yeah, very, very young team. You have, looking through it right now, you have one junior in your starting lineup and one fifth year coming off the bench, and everyone else is either a freshman or a sophomore.
Because the past like 4 or 5 years, it's all been they're bringing back somebody.
Yeah,
like a Jaime Jaquez or a Tiger Campbell.
Yeah,
Where it helps those freshmen like Amari Bailey last year flow a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like not last year's UCLA, or was it last? No, it was 2 years ago UCLA that just brought back everyone from the 2021-22 season, where they brought back everyone from the 21 COVID year run that they had. You bring back everyone. You bring back Juzang. You bring back Hawkins. You bring back Campbell. Bring back all those guys. And then they had a good season, but it wasn't quite to the quality that they thought they were going to have. And then the next year you lose Juzang, but you bring back Hawkins again. You bring back Tiger Campbell again. You bring back Singleton. You bring back Clark. You add in Amari Bailey, or Amani. Excuse me. No, Amari. Who's Amani? Who's the good Amani? Amani Bates.
Amani Bates.
I was talking about him earlier. That's Amari Bailey. But then now, like you said, you don't really have those guys that UCLA typically brings back. So the freshmen are going to be a lot more relied on this year. And Adem Bona, only a sophomore, is going to have to take a big leadership role. So I think this season's probably going to go one of two ways for UCLA. It's either all these freshmen just step in and play great and they're going to have a really good year because they have a lot of talented freshmen, or this is going to be a tough year for them. And then hopefully for UCLA's sake, Cronin can convince them all to stay. And if like he's done so much in the past already. So if you have a team, or I think if you have a team to look for, not to get too far ahead of ourselves as we haven't even started the 23-24 season yet, but if UCLA brings back everyone, the 24-25 UCLA team is probably a hands-on favorite, but I just don't think this year's quite the year for them.
Yeah. It's going to be I think it'll probably be a regression year, but not like a crazy regression year. I still think they're a tournament team. but not like the 2 seed they were last year.
Yeah, I think this is definitely gonna be. Uh, a lot of people talk about the difference between a rebuild and a reload. I think this is probably somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's quite a full rebuild, but you got a lot of guys you got to replace to consider a reload. So I think this is going to be I think this is going to be a roller coaster year for UCLA, where they're going to definitely get some huge wins in the non-conference and in the conference season, but they're probably going to have some losses where you're just like, what are we doing here? But it's going to be a young team that's going to have to grow through it and figure it out. And I think they will by the end of the year. We'll see how far that takes them, but it's just going to be an interesting year for them. But anything else on UCLA?
No.
All right, let's just quickly touch on Oregon. Like I said, a team that just missed the tournament last year. Lose some guys like Will Richardson, Quincy Guerre, who is at Illinois now. Kalel Ware, kind of a guy that didn't quite work out the way they thought he was going to, transferred off. Bring in some talented freshmen. I believe they had, I was just looking at this, I believe they had the number 2 class in the Pac-12. Yeah, number 2 in the Pac-12, 11th in the country. So another team, not quite as big of a class, where UCLA was bringing in 6 freshmen, Oregon only bringing in 3, but they're all very talented. You got 4-star Kwame Evans Jr. from Mount Verde, number 18 player in the country. Jackson Shellstad, number 26 player in the country, another 4-star, and another 4-star in Mookie Cook, number 40 of the country. So you got 3 top 40 freshmen that are probably going to be relied on a lot. Maybe not necessarily as starters, but going to have key roles off the bench. So another team where you lose some of your experience. The experience that you bring back wasn't great last year. It was solid. You bring in Karia Aquendo, transferred from Georgia, to kind of duct tape and bubble gum that together a little bit after losing some of those guys from last year. But probably going to be a shaky year for Oregon too. But then again, we're also talking about the Pac-12, so who knows?
Yeah, you're right. It's just I think this Oregon team's, like you said, gonna be with UCLA like a roller coaster year. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and I think you could be seeing them come March. I don't see them having like too much success against these Arizonas, UCLA's or USC's, but I still think they're gonna be a solid team. I think Dana Altman's gonna be able to get them going in the right direction.
Yeah, he's obviously a great coach, and there's no doubt that he'll figure out some way how to make this season successful. But that's pretty much all I got on the Pac-12. You got anything else?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we kind of fell behind the 8 ball a little bit with some technical difficulties and some scheduling conflicts, so we're not quite on schedule for where we wanted to be with these previews. So we'll probably try to start combining some over the next week and try to get them all out before the season starts in a couple weeks. But a lot of, like I said at the top of the podcast, a lot of exhibitions starting this week. A lot of exhibitions throughout the next week or two with, like I said, these charity games that will be televised. Obviously, the secret scrimmages that won't, but you always hear the news and notes from them. Like, apparently Jaden Epps had like 42 points in a secret scrimmage last week for Georgetown. So it's fun to see these notes come out. Fun to see the AP poll come out, but we're getting close to the start of the season.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Almost there. 2 weeks from Monday.
It's
getting close. From my perspective, last non-game week was this week for Butler. So we got our first exhibition a week from Saturday against Ohio Northern on homecoming, which is a discussion for another day. Missing out on the senior homecoming for the big matchup against Ohio Northern, but
powerhouse.
Powerhouse. Hinkle Fieldhouse will be electric that day, I'm sure. But yeah, we're getting close to close to the start of the season. So, like I said, we'll try to get these previews kind of doubled up and make sure we get them all out before the season starts. But if you don't have anything else,
I'm all good.
all right. Well, appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be back next week with some more previews.